Black Ops 7 Zombies' villain has been revealed. We now know just what or who the Great Voice from Beyond, aka the Warden according to Tom Henderson, looks and sounds like, and with this information we can begin to theorize about their identity. There are multiple theories I've already seen floating around, as well as a few that I have, all of which I want to break down in this video, so we will take quite a few of these candidates, look at them in detail, and decide which is the most likely. All of that and more will be unveiled in this video, so stay tuned. Let's start with a dive into the Great Voice's striking appearance, as revealed in the Ashes of the Damned intro cutscene for Black Ops 7 Zombies. This mysterious figure is dressed head to toe in a classic old western cowboy outfit, wearing jingling spurs on his boots, a wide-brimmed cowboy hat, and a pair of sunglasses that lend an air of mystery to his face and hide his eyes. His voice drips with a southern drawl, frequently tossing out "y'all" in a way that feels straight out of a western film. A Civil War era sword hangs at his hip. Most intriguing are the two cages he carries, each holding a skull, one of which he uses in the cutscene to absorb the souls of the original characters and the Requiem crew, indicating some dark, supernatural power. His eyes, once he removes his sunglasses, glow with an eerie white or grey hue, reminiscent of Samantha Maxis's when she was empowered by the Dark Aether, though her eyes were purple in comparison. This visual similarity suggests the Warden is either corrupted or empowered by the Dark Aether's energies. This cowboy sheriff aesthetic points strongly to an old western origin, likely the mid to late 19th century, if he comes from the real world. If he's a Dark Aether entity, he might be mimicking an old west figure, similar to how the Dark Aether demons in Vanguard Zombies influenced human cultures across history. A pivotal piece of dialogue from the cutscene is the following line.
I know. Y'all are confused. So was I. But as they say, this too shall pass.
This offers a critical clue for us here. This line implies the Warden was once human, arriving in the Dark Aether disorientated, much like our characters, before adapting and seizing power himself. Maybe even being a victim just like them, but turning from prey to predator, harvesting the souls to empower him, as he himself seems to be lifeless considering he also has these whitish eyes similar to the crew's once their essence is taken, and has rotten zombified flesh with a lot of dark, ashy substance around his eyes. This leans away from a native Dark Aether entity and towards a human transformed by this realm. But before we get too into the specifics, let's explore the candidates for the Great Voice's identity, examining how they are alive, where they came from, why they want to restore the multiverse, and how likely each theory is. The first theory suggests that the Great Voice is an ancient Dark Aether entity, possibly one of the Old Ones, older than Zykov, or the Vanguard gods like Cortifex, who returned to power after Zykov's demise. How is he alive and in control? This candidate would be a primordial god of the Dark Aether, existing since the realm's earliest days. Such an entity might have been sealed away or dormant, perhaps for as long as an Archon held sway over the Dark Aether. The death of Zykov, who absorbed the prior Archon Cortifex, could have broken this seal, allowing the entity to awaken and assert dominance, commanding the Dark Aether's forces with unmatched power and fulfilling the prophecy of the Old Ones in Black Ops Cold War's final batch of intel, such as on Spragmos's parchment paper. The devoured shall be reborn, their scattered ashes shall be reformed, the Forsaken's torment will be undone when the Old Ones reign once more. If true, where did he come from? As an Old One, the Warden's origins would trace back to the Dark Aether's creation, a realm as ancient as the Aether itself. His beginnings would be steeped in esoteric mystery, tied to the chaotic birth of his dimension in times we do not understand. In Black Ops Cold War, Spragmos describes the Old Ones as beings who fought to a stalemate when the Dark Aether was young, long before the Nether Wars sparked by Cortifex's rise. These entities seem to predate even the corruption of the Keepers into the Apothegons, existing before the Aether story's infinite cycles began. If true, why restore the multiverse? An Old One's motives would be cosmic in scope, restoring the multiverse, which collapsed into the Dark Aether at the ending of Tag the Totem, which would allow this entity to extend the Dark Aether's influence across infinite realities, achieving eternal dominion over all existence in a multiverse reshaped by its malevolent will. How likely is this candidate though? This theory was once a strong contender earlier, given the Great Voice's immense power and the prophecy of the Old One's return. Spragmos' words in Black Ops Cold War set the stage. The devoured shall be reborn, their scarred ashes will be reformed when the Old Ones reign once more. The Warden's commanding presence seemed to fit this ancient godlike figure. However, the Ashes of the Damned cutscene cast significant doubt. His human appearance, complete with a cowboy outfit and southern vernacular, feels distinctly earthly. His glowing white eyes align with empowered humans like Samantha Maxis, not native Dark Aether entities. His dialogue about being confused upon arriving in the Dark Aether strongly suggests a human origin. Additionally, prior intel about Panos' ally mentioned a university education, pointing to a human with formal schooling, not an ancient god.
You know, Warden wants to stay. Quite tricky here. Okay.
Killing shouldn't be this easy.
Very
Not that I'm complaining.
different experiences at university.
In Modern Warfare Zombies, the Shadowsmiths, led by a shadowy hat-wearing figure called the Shadow Benefactor, who we now know is the Warden/Great Voice, were introduced as a formidable force.
He is searching for you. The Shadow Smiths will take you.
In the Ascension mission, the entity describes the Shadowsmiths as stronger than itself, hinting at their ancient origins, possibly aligning with the Old Ones. Syraxis provides further insight in Vanguard intel.
I don't know how many of your centuries ago it happened, but I remember when we first became aware of your world. Before that, we thought the Dark Aether was, well, everything. Then one day, strange items began to appear in my realm. I speak of things like that pack-a-punch device, and the box that spits out guns. They caused quite an uproar among my kind. How did they work? Where do they come from? And what kind of trouble could I stir up over there? I spent several of your lifetimes just catching glimpses through the dimensional veil. I watched you silly things discover agriculture and start to trade routes on the basis. So the mechanisms that landed in the Dark Aether must have come from your future. Don't ask me how. Oh, I was too busy playing with your ancestors to care. At first, I got them to see me in campfires, then in pools of water. Later, it was mirrors and then crystal balls. The more civilized you became, the more refined the lens through which we spoke. But there was no crossing over, no visiting in the flesh. So I looked for a way to deepen my contact and my control. I needed an anchor in your reality. A trans-dimensional link so we could really connect. And that's when it hit me. That's when I had the idea for what you now call the artifacts.
She recalls when the Dark Aether became aware of humanity, as artifacts like the Pack-a-Punch and Mystery Box appeared in their realm post-Tag the Totem. At that time, humanity was in its infancy, barely mastering agriculture, meaning even gods like Cortifex are far older than modern humanity even at its earliest. Zykov's Black Ops Cold War intel describes a creature hunting elder gods, and mentions they are distinct from the Old Ones, who, he said, existed long prior. This creature, the Forsaken, consumes victims to absorb their power and shapeshift. While Zykov lied about not being the Forsaken himself, his account of the Old Ones as ancient combatants from the realm's youth is still credible. Kortifex, despite his power, isn't an Old One, as his kingdom existed after the Dark Aether's Nether Wars, sparked by his patricidal rise to power. The Old Ones predate even the Apothecan's corruption, existing in a pre-Aether story era. For the Warden to be an Old One, he'd need to be a human from the Aether multiverse's earliest moments, but somehow educated at a university, manipulative, and wielding immense Dark Aether power. This combination stretches credibility given his human traits and dialogue, rendering this theory less viable. The second candidate posits that the Warden is a reborn version of Archibald, the Warden from Mob of the Dead and Blood of the Dead's Alcatraz, reimagined in the Dark Aether timeline as an Old West figure. But if true, how would he be alive and in control? In this theory, Archibald, originally the Alcatraz Warden in Mob of the Dead, is reborn in the Dark Aether timeline. Instead of selling his soul to the Shadow Man, as he did in the Aether storyline, this version struck a deal with another Dark Aether entity, perhaps a Shadowsmith or a similar power. This pact would have granted him survival and authority, allowing him to rise to a commanding role within the Dark Aether, much like Zykov's transformation into the Forsaken or the original Archibald's transformation into the demonic Warden of Alcatraz. If true, where did he come from? Rather than existing in the Mob of the Dead Alcatraz setting of the 1930s, this Archibald would have been a jail warden, a sheriff in an Old West town during the mid to late 19th century, aligning with the Warden's cowboy aesthetic. The collapse of the Aether multiverse into the Dark Aether at the ending of Tag Toten could have pulled this reborn Archibald into the realm, where he adapted and seized power. The reuse of the Warden title ties this theory to his Blood of the Dead counterpart, suggesting a thematic connection across timelines. Not to be confused with Archibald from the Tomb, by the way, as if you were unaware, the actual name of the Warden of Alcatraz is Archibald. Referenced in the radios on Blood of the Dead, that was then removed, but I think is still present on Xbox.
That's a good lad. You have been an adequate servant, Archibald. Therefore you will continue to serve after the corruption.
Such an honor.
If this theory is true, why would he want to restore the multiverse? This Archibald might have learned of his Blood of the Dead counterpart through the Dark Aether's residual knowledge and temporal bleeding of the Aether's multiverse. Inspired by the Apothecan's cosmic ambitions, he could seek to restore the multiverse to continue their mission. Viewing himself as their successor, his goal might be to revive the Apothecan's influence, reshaping reality to align with their chaotic vision, or to achieve personal power by unlocking the multiverse's potential and now lead the Apothecans rather than be their puppet. But how likely is this? This theory is compelling, but hinges primarily on the reused Warden name, which has not even been confirmed in the full release and is just according to leaks, so could just be a codename for him and may not ever be referenced in the actual game. Let's delve into the lore for context. In Mob of the Dead and Blood of the Dead, Archibald, also known as Brutus, was the Alcatraz Warden manipulated by the Shadow Man, posing as Satan. He oversaw the construction of Alcatraz, including Richtofen's laboratory and a 115 mine, and was promised power to rule a hellish dimension. This trapped him in a purgatory pocket dimension, where he governed the mobsters but couldn't escape. His attempt to break free in Blood of the Dead failed, and after his usefulness to the Apothecans ended, he was abandoned and killed by the original characters. In the Dark Aether timeline, this theory proposes Archibald is reborn as an Old West Warden, paralleling his Blood of the Dead role. The Aether multiverse frequently reinterpreted characters across dimensions, such as the Reporter pursuing Richtofen or Cornelia/Cornelia Pennell in Revelations, a woman version of Cornelius. This reborn Archibald could have been a lawman in a frontier town, pulled into the Dark Aether during the multiverse's collapse. His deal with the Dark Aether entity could mirror his original pact with the Shadow Man, granting him power but potentially trapping him in a new form of servitude inside of the Dark Aether. The cowboy aesthetic and Warden title fit this narrative, with the name suggesting a deliberate nod to his Aether counterpart. And considering the fact we have the Dark Aether versions of the original characters that are all from different alternative irrespective timelines separate to the versions of Ultimus and Primus, we know that Treyarch are working with with the multiverse once more. Could this new Warden have been from a different alternative timeline, and this time he was a Western cowboy instead of the Warden of Alcatraz? Since we're dealing with a multiverse, there's infinite possibilities. Hell, there'll be a Richtofen out there from the dinosaur era for all we know. Further support comes from the Black Ops 6's Vault Edition, which reintroduces the Warden and Klaus as operators. We ended up not seeing the Warden at all in the story of Black Ops 6, but Klaus featured heavily in his final map, Reckoning. If Klaus returned, the Warden could too. Not as the Mob of the Dead version, but as a Dark Aether variant. This is further evidence with Ted being in the Vault Edition for Black Ops 7, and we know he's going to be a part of the launch map for Black Ops 7 Zombies as well. This reborn Archibald could have encountered a Sentinel artifact or some weakness in the dimensional veil, and gotten sucked into the Dark Aether. While the name and aesthetic align, the lack of direct evidence beyond these parallels makes this theory plausible but not definitive. As to make this work, we have essentially invented a new character anyway, but he could have been one of the many characters plunged into the Dark Aether at the ending of Tag to Toten. A popular theory circulating in my comments and on Twitter suggests the Warden is Jeb Brown, or Jebediah Brown, in full. The blacksmith who created the Pack-a-Punch and Agarthan device who we learned about in Tag to Toten. If true, how would he be alive and in control? Jeb could have been pulled into the Dark Aether during Tag to Toten's ending, when the multiverse collapsed. Over time, he might have gained power through Dark Aether entities or artifacts, leveraging his knowledge of the Agarthan device and other mystical objects and powers to rise to a powerful role, commanding the realm's forces with newfound authority. But where would he have come from? Jeb hails from Purgatory Point, an Old West mining town in the late 1800s, perfectly matching the Warden's cowboy aesthetic. If he was alive in a universe absorbed by the Dark Aether, he could have been transported there, adapting to its environment and gaining influence over time. Why would he want to restore the multiverse though? Jeb Brown's motive is challenging to define. He might seek to restore his universe to escape the Dark Aether's torment, feeling betrayed by his Agarthan device's role in the multiverse's collapse. His expertise with the device could enable him to undo its effects, theoretically restoring the multiverse. However, as an ally of the Keepers, who sought to protect the world, restoring the chaotic multiverse contradicts his goals, as he built artifacts to prevent such chaos. How likely is he as a candidate? This theory has some merit. Jeb's Old West origin aligns with the Warden's appearance, and the Wonder Vehicle in Black Ops 7, which has a new Pack-a-Punch as a part of it, could tie to Jeb Brown's creation of the original, especially because on the front of the vehicle seems to be a goat skull or something like that, very similar to the icon for Buried, and of course matching its town. However, significant obstacles exist in this theory. Jeb Brown's limited power in the Aether story makes his transformation into a figure as formidable as the Warden unlikely. His Keeper allegiance further undermines a motive to restore the multiverse. In the Chronorium, the official timeline describing his existence as well, his story ends when he is overrun by zombies after Purgatory Point teleports to Angola, Africa. His death and limited power make this theory less credible, despite the Old West connection. As well as this new villain is seemingly a sheriff, and as far as we're aware, Jeb Brown was just a blacksmith. A further hole in this theory is the fact that he never seemed to be a menacing, villainous character in creating the Pack-a-Punch, and he literally Pack-a-Punched his own mother. He always sounded like a bit of a dweeb in his origin story. To me, the menacing nature of this new villain doesn't match, but obviously he would have been in the Dark Aether for eons at this point. He could definitely have mutated or turned into this villainous character, similar to how Zykov went in as just a human and then eventually became this massive god. However, he doesn't really strike me as a blacksmith, but the name does align with the Shadowsmiths as described in Modern Warfare Zombies, and could definitely tie in with Jeb Brown. I really do like this idea, but honestly I'm just not seeing it, especially because like I said, he died. He got overrun by zombies. Now, could his body have then ended up in the Dark Aether and mutated and somehow restored him or cloned him as the Dark Aether does? Yes, that's possible, but I think it's a bit of a reach, so now we're going to jump into the most likely candidate. I believe they are probably a new character from the new timeline's Old West, pulled into the Dark Aether and transformed into this great voice character over the years. If true, how would he be alive and in control? This character could have stumbled through a dimensional veil, like those in Black Ops Cold War, or got sucked in through a temporal anomaly, or been deliberately pulled into the Dark Aether by an entity such as a Shadowsmith or other faction. Over time, he adapted, either through corruption by the Dark Aether's energies, or by mastering its forces, rising to a position of power akin to Zaikov's but on a grander scale. If true, where did he come from? He would originate from America's Old West, likely as a sheriff or jail warden, given his title and cowboy attire. The high-quality Civil War era sword suggests wealth or status, fitting a prominent lawman in a frontier town. His sunglasses and spurs add a flair of individuality, suggesting a charismatic or authoritative figure wherever he is from. He also has the emblem on his hat, with the two different swords and the dual-wielding pistols with a skull in the middle. Him describing being confused, similar to the crew, suggests he faced a similar fate getting sucked in there, so potentially he could be from the new timeline, post-tagged a Toten, and he got sucked in there at some point, or he could be from the old multiverse that got collapsed into the Dark Aether. Either theory works, to be honest. Either way, he would have been in the Dark Aether for quite some time, and potentially even suffered the same fate as them, where he had his essence extracted, which is why he looks all gruesome and zombified and has white eyes, and now he has to try and suck the essence of other people to try and restore his health and empower him. But why would he want to restore the multiverse in this case? Having learned of the collapsed multiverse through his time in the Dark Aether, this character might develop delusions of grandeur, seeking to restore the multiverse to rule it or reshape reality in his image. His outsider perspective, combined with his newfound power, could fuel a desire to reclaim a lost world or seize ultimate control, driven by ambition or a corrupted sense of purpose, especially if he is from the old multiverse that got collapsed into there as opposed to the new universe. But how likely is this? To me, this theory is the most compelling. The Warden's dialogue, particularly, "I know y'all are confused, so was I," strongly suggests he's a human who entered the Dark Aether, experienced disorientation, and rose to power. The deliberate inclusion of this line in the cutscene, given its brevity in terms of dialogue, as barely anyone speaks, indicates explicit intent to portray him as a non-native entity of the Dark Aether in a similar situation to where the crew are now. His Old West aesthetic and lack of clear ties to existing characters supports a fresh identity. The university clue from Panos' ally aligns with an educated individual, perhaps a learned lawman with a scholarly background. This candidate fits the Warden's human traits, dialogue and appearance, and all clues so far, making it the strongest contender. And if we've seen in the Dark Aether so far, every time we've thought the villain was actually someone from the old story, it never ended up being true. For example, we thought that the Forsaken initially, when he was just being referred to as the One in the intel, was Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man recombined. That ended up not being true. When we saw the silhouette of the entity for the first time, we thought it was Samantha Maxis in the Dark Aether, but they ended up being a new villain, birthed alongside Ava Jansen. We initially thought that the Great Voice was the Shadow Man due to his similar silhouette appearance with the hat. Again, that has proven to not be true, so I think the likelihood of this being a new character, a new villain, is very strong, and he has great aura, he looks so cool, aside from when he takes off his glasses. He might actually be weak to sun, that's why he wears sunglasses even though he's literally in the Dark Aether, a very dark realm. Maybe that's going to be how we actually fight against him. We have to shine light at him or something. But I really do believe he is a new character. But let's get into the most interesting topic. The Warden's two caged skulls, one used to absorb souls in the cutscene when he whispers "feed," are a critical mystery as well. Their ability to perform magic suggests they hold significant power, and their identity is likely tied to the Warden's true nature. If the Great Voice is a reborn Archibald, the skulls could be Primus and Ultimus Richtofen as pivotal figures in the Aether multiverse. One aligns with the Apothegons, the other with the Keepers. Their remains could hold the key to restoring the multiverse. Archibald's past connection to Richtofen via the Shadow Man in Blood of the Dead could explain how he acquired them, perhaps finding their remains in the Dark Aether. considering the forest they died in is probably within the Dark Aether. If the Great Voice is Jeb Brown, the skulls might be Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man, representing creation and destruction. Jeb Brown's keeper contacts, described as angels, could be these figures in human form. He was visited by two angels who helped him create the Pack-a-Punch and everything else. That could literally be them. The Monty skull could create universes, while the Shadow Man's destroys, as seen in the cutscene. And of course, Samantha Maxis retrieved the scarf of Dr. Monty, and Nikolai confirmed in Tag to Toten's ending that'll play now that Dr. Monty got sent into the Dark Aether.
Element 115, the Apothecars, even Monty himself. All of it will be banished to where it belongs. The Dark Aether.
The fact he lost his scarf for Samantha to retrieve it suggests he might have actually died, and both Monty and the Shadow Man could be dead, and then the Great Voice retrieved their skulls. However, the skull's human appearance seems to rule out Keeper origins, and we know Dr. Monty and the Shadow Man's human forms are not their true forms, making this less likely, but I guess we do not know the science behind it. If they die in their human form, are their skulls just permanently like a human's? I do not know. I guess we don't actually even know what Monty and the Shadow Man's skulls would even look like in their Apothecon/Keeper forms. Which I guess is another interesting topic. Is the Great Voice able to turn into some sort of monster as well, similar to Monty and the Shadow Man, or is this his only form? We have no idea right now, we'll just have to wait and see. If he does have another form, it wouldn't suggest anything towards his identity, whether he originated from the realm or not, because like with Super Psychov, he didn't originate from the realm and he was still able to transform into some monster. So I wonder what his true form actually is, if he has one. But if the Great Voice is a new character, the skulls could be personal connections from his old Western life, his wife and child, perhaps in parallel to Janice Richtofen, parents he lost, to sort of parallel Jeb Brown's mother, or deputies pulled into the Dark Aether alongside him. Alternatively, they could be artifacts he found, like Richtofen or Monty, but tied to his own story, perhaps turning these once vital characters into tools of his rise to power. The skull's true nature remains an enigma for now, but I believe we will find out the truth throughout the course of Black Ops 7 Zombies. Another idea could be, maybe when he entered the realm, his essence did get taken from him, similar to how he takes the essence of the characters, and these could be the skulls of two people who stole his essence and he got revenge on later once he managed to gain some power. To sum it up, the Great Voice's identity in Black Ops 7 Zombies is very much hinted at within the cutscene. His cowboy appearance, glowing white eyes, and soul-absorbing skulls paint him as a human corrupted or empowered by the Dark Aether, likely from America's Old West. The ancient Dark Aether entity theory, while initially promising due to the Old One's prophecy, falters against the human traits and dialogue, suggesting past confusion upon entering the Dark Aether. The Reborn Archibald theory, envisioning a Dark Aether variant of the Mob of the Dead and Blood of the Dead Warden, is compelling due to the reused Warden name and parallels to his Aether story, but it lacks direct evidence beyond this connection. Jeb Brown's old Western origin and Pack-a-Punch creation align with the Warden's aesthetic and the Wonder vehicle having the Pack-a-Punch, but his Keeper allegiance and limited power make him an unlikely candidate. The most persuasive theory, in my opinion, is a new character, a sheriff or jail warden from the real world's Old West, pulled into the Dark Aether, where he gained power and seeks to restore the multiverse from ambition or redemption. The skull's identities, potentially Richtofen variants, Monty and the Shadow Man, or personal connections of the Warden himself depend on the Warden's true nature. But what do you think? Who do you think the Great Voice is in your mind? Do you agree with my analysis, or do you have an entirely different take? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I've definitely seen most people thinking it's Jeb Brown or a new character, and I'm leaning towards a new character, but if it had to be any old character, Jeb Brown is definitely the most likely, of course, as he fits the MO very, very well. These discussions often spark new insights that reshape our theory, so I'll be sure to read your comments and maybe I can cover them in the future. Of course, we're getting lots more reveals very, very soon, so maybe we'll learn more. But that's all for now. But anyways, thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe if you're not for the latest and greatest Call of Duty news and information. So anyways, thank you for watching, and bye. To conclude this video, I want to shout out the fact that I finally decided to make a Patreon and Cameo account, both of which will be linked below if you want to help support the channel. On Patreon, you can sign up for the lowest tier of just $1.50 a month to get exclusive access for my Discord, where we can discuss zombies lore, trivia, or whatever you desire. A place where you lot, my community, can better connect. Your names will also appear at the end of videos thanking you. For $5.50 a month, you get all of that, and I will be doing exclusive exclusive monthly Q&As. And for $16.50 a month, you again get all of that, and I will be doing exclusive lore videos, such as unpacking niche parts of the Treyarch documents I've been breaking down on my channel that don't as much suit a main channel video. For the highest tier, only for those with the ability to and who really want to help out the channel, you get special bonuses I've yet to determine and verbal shoutouts at the end of every video. Over on Cameo, I can do funny videos reading lines from zombies, memes like how do we tell him, birthday wishes for friends or family, or whatever else you desire, practically anything. Of course, none of this is necessary, just watching and enjoying the videos helps me immensely and I greatly appreciate it. However, I think it's about time I start setting up additional revenue streams because Zombies' popularity is tumultuous and always goes through ups and downs. As I'm sure you've lately seen on the channel, viewership is down a lot. We go through big highs when new games release, but then during these drought periods, I need more income stability so I don't have to worry as much about it and I can focus more on improving the quality of the content. My highest quality videos are not always the ones that best please YouTube algorithms, so instead, this way I can produce my best work knowing I don't have to think as much about how well the content's going to perform. So if you'd like to support me on Patreon for exclusive content or would like a simple Cameo message, you can do so to further support me via the links below, but only if you can afford it and you actually want to help me. Don't feel like you are forced to, don't worry, I'll survive. It would just help relieve some of the pressure during inconsistent periods on the channel so I don't have to solely rely on AdSense revenue and still maintain the sheer quantity and quality of content that I put out. Obviously I pump out literally a boatload of content and some of these are absolutely crazy projects over hour-long videos, so it's a lot on my plate, especially when these videos don't perform particularly well. And I've not been doing many sponsorships lately to help supplement revenue either, so it would greatly help. Thank you for any generous person once again who does kindly support the channel. It means the absolute world and will really help keep this boat afloat.